The dust hasn't even settled from President-elect Donald Trump's historic landslide victory over Hillary Clinton, and the enemies of freedom are already on the march. A group of prominent speech Nazis is calling for a crackdown on so-called alt-right media figures who supported Donald Trump's candidacy. This is a danger to your freedom of speech because Obama put the mechanism in place last year to regulate internet speech. The FCC voted to reclassify the internet as a public utility in 2015. So here comes the regulations if we don't speak out. We're supporting the Internet Freedom Act, designed as H.R. 1212 in the House, which would nullify FCC regulation of the internet. Before we get started, let me explain what the alt-right is briefly and why the speech Nazis want to censor the alt-right. The term is short for alternative right. The alt-right is a decentralized movement of patriots that emerged out of the former Tea Party movement. There are a lot of different philosophies within the alt-right, but the ideology as a whole supports the ideas of freedom of speech, strong borders, and nationalism, and rejects the ideas of the Bush, Obama, Clinton globalism, such as political correctness, open borders, and job-killing free trade deals which are not free but actually create slavery. The alt-right includes prominent media figures like Matt Drudge, Ann Coulter, and Sean Hannity, as well as lesser-known Twitter stars and even a few humble folks with channels on places like YouTube, like me. That's your hint to hit the subscribe link, by the way, so go ahead and plug away at that subscribe link. The alt-right helped Donald Trump win the presidency due to our massive internet influence, and because of that, the speech Nazis now want to crack down on anyone who identifies as alt-right. Well, come on and crack down on me, see how far you get. So this is why we need to push back by demanding right now that Congress deregulate the internet and pass H.R. 1212. But first, wait until you hear the chilling statements of some of the so-called conservatives who now want to crack down on your free speech rights because of the Donald Trump victory. Stay tuned. That's what's coming up next.
It's time for another blistering report from the front lines of the cultural war for a constitutional America. And now, here's your host, Charles Benninghoff.
Here's what the headline reads on the Washington Examiner. Trump critics call for crackdown on conservative media. I want to read you some quotes from these Trump critics who are actually enemies of freedom of speech. They represent mainstream media. They can't see that their empires are built on sand and the wave of alt-right power is coming in and washing them out to sea. Well, you can find a link to the full article on our action page today, and Bob Mallory in a short bit will tell you how to get there. So here we go. Let's give you some quotes. A guy named Oliver Darcy from Business Insider says, and I quote, "The Republican base remains largely unreachable, locked away in a space in which only figures like talk show host Rush Limbaugh, Fox News host Sean Hannity, and internet titan Matt Drudge hold the keys." Darcy goes on to explain that some Republicans who were opposed to Trump are starting to fall in line with the Democrats behind the idea that conservative media has too many followers. They're too popular. People watch us too often. Well, when will these idiots learn? Don't you see why I call them speech Nazis now? What we're saying is the alt-right is winning the intellectual argument. So they argue then that we need to use government control to shut us up. The article quotes a man named Matt Macwiak, the Republican president of the Potomac Strategy Group. Macwiak says, and I quote, "You can put pressure on advertisers and corporations that run them. You can directly or indirectly limit the access of elected officials to the alt-right." You can, let me repeat that. You can directly or indirectly limit the access of elected officials to the alt-right. Talk about the ultimate in Nazism. That's it. Shut off the communication. Put down the freedom of speech. So Matt Wiak is talking about regulating conservative media sources under something like the so-called fairness doctrine. Do you remember the Fairness Doctrine? Well, that was a socialist Democrat bill that was never passed, and it basically said it was unfair that Rush Limbaugh was popular. So radio stations, all of which are private businesses, will be forced to run boring Democrat hosts like Al Franken that will make those stations lose their audiences and their profits. Here's a really scary quote, though. Let me repeat it. And I quote, "You can directly or indirectly limit the access of elected officials to the alt-right," close quote. I like to ask you this question. How do you limit access of elected officials to the conservative media? Oh, you just call them up and say, hey, you can't talk to Matt Drudge anymore. You can't talk to Charles Benninghoff. What's going on here? You're no longer allowed to talk to whomever we don't want you to talk to. I think he's also talking about switching off the Drudge Report or other websites directly so that people can't learn the truth. The mainstream media did everything in its power to prevent you from learning about Hillary Clinton's health problems this year. The alt-right told you the truth and showed the videos of crooked Hillary's head flopping around like a turkey when she was on an on-camera seizure. I did a video on that. Go back and look for it. We have some really good shots of her going flopping around like a turkey, being led off to Thanksgiving dinner table. We also showed you Hillary's collapse at the 9/11 ceremony when the Secret Service had to throw her into a medical van like a slab of pork. Mainstream media covered that up. Here's another quote from the article, this time from John Ziegler, who is supposedly a conservative radio host. I now doubt it highly. I don't know what his political persuasions are, conservative or not included. But he's talking about Barack Obama's remarks about the alt-right media. And I quote, "When I was watching Obama," this guy said, "when I was watching Obama, I was struck by how he seemed to understand the problems with conservative media more than any Republican does. It was frustrating to see him be the voice of reason." I really love this one. Can you imagine a guy like this John Ziegler who actually thinks he's a conservative and says something like Obama being the voice of reason, even while Obama's up yelling and screaming and promising aliens if they go vote and feloniously break the law, he's going to defend them. Well, Ziegler, why don't you stuff that? Because you know what? You're an idiot. You are a complete idiot, and you say things that make you look even worse than being an idiot. The same Barack Obama, by the way, who turned control over the internet to the United Nations on October 1st. That's the voice of reason? By the way, did you know the UN is right now working on a global tax for your internet access? And you know you're going to be paying through the nose for Obama unless Trump can reverse that. The same Barack Obama, by the way, whose lackeys at the FCC voted to penalize Fox News for holding a Republican primary debate. Now, this guy is a voice of reason to these Trump critics. That tells you everything you need to know about these critics. Notice one thing that these speech Nazis never say. They never state this in these quotes. They never say that alt-right is wrong or that conservative media is lying, because we're not wrong and we never lie. They just don't like that you make the choice to listen to the alternative media, us, instead of them. And that the fact that we are brave enough to stand up to you globalists trying to destroy America's freedoms and America's jobs. Here's how we can beat the speech Nazis. I discussed it before. The Internet Freedom Act, H.R. 1212. We've got to get behind Representative Marsha Blackburn, who wrote it. She's a Republican from Tennessee. She's a free speech champion and a Trump supporter. Her bill will nullify the Obama rule change that allows the FCC to regulate the Internet. It will bring back freedom of speech to the Internet as well. If we don't pass this bill, it leaves a mechanism in place for the government to censor conservative media sources on the Internet, and I believe that censorship will creep out to other places. You've seen how unhinged Trump opponents are for the past 18 months. Now they're rioting in the streets, burning down buildings, trashing cars, attacking cops. I think even a few people have been killed. Now they want to censor your favorite conservative media sources. And they will do it if we don't revive this bill, the Internet Freedom Act, and pass it immediately. You can do that from our internet page today. You can start sending personalized letters to Congress telling Congress how to support and pass the Internet Freedom Act. Do it today. We have instructions on the next screen for you that tell you how to get to our action page and become an action hero yourself by speaking out to Congress in the name of free speech and the free internet. Do it while you still can before these speech Nazis silence all of us. This is Charles Benninghoff signing off and wishing you freedom, fulfillment, and God's many blessings.
Support the Internet Freedom Act to stop internet censorship by the speech Nazis opposing alternative and conservative media. If you're watching this from our action page on our website, just use the form next to the video screen to select a program. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, click the icon appearing now to find a link to our action page, or check the video's description to find the link. Speak out today.